welcome back to Living Transparent. In this episode, we are still continuing with the book, the Life Book, which is based in the book of Mark, and we are in chapter 15.
Yeah, so recap from last time, we ended up where Peter denies Jesus, and basically what Jesus had told Peter, oh, you're going to deny me? Well, it happened, he did it, and now we are in the part where Jesus is delivered to Pilate. So here we see that, they had captured Jesus already, but now they were like in the next step, which was sending Jesus to Pilate so that he could like potentially be crucified. Mm-hmm. And here Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of Jews?" And Jesus again simply responded, "You have said so." The chief priest accused him of many things, and here Jesus could have said so many things. He could have said like, oh, well, this and this, they're accusing me, blah blah blah, but he didn't. He just simply answered, "You have said so." And we constantly see, prior to this, we see that Jesus answered, "I am." And he just answers with such simplicity, but yet it has so much meaning, and it's really profound. And the chief priests, once again, they were accusing him of many things, and Pilate again asked him, "Have you no answer to make?" Jesus made no further answer, and Pilate was amazed at this, cause if you think about it, if you're innocent, you fight for it, you're like, no, they're accusing me and this and that, but here we see that Jesus was so calm. We see that Jesus was like, he was just like, I know what I have to go through. I know this is what the prophecy says that has to be fulfilled. So I have to complete the purpose that was intended for him coming here.
Yeah, and they brought Jesus to Pilate because the Jews couldn't execute their own criminals. And we were reading that in a commentary. And since many people would have been like, they would have been mad. They would have been like, there would have been riots because many people followed Jesus. Mm-hmm. And if they would have done all of this, if they would have not sent him to Pilate, then there would have been so much controversy, and everything would have fallen again on the chief priests, on them. And we constantly see that they're trying to get their hands clean. They're trying to even the arrest, that they made it where it wasn't as public. Even then we see how they're trying to, in a way, be discreet. Yeah. But they're still trying to, crucify Jesus. Yeah, they were trying to be like, no, it wasn't us.
Yeah. So then now we go to the next part. Pilate delivers Jesus to be crucified. So here now we see that they're at a feast, and he used to release for them one prisoner whom they asked, and this was a normal procedure, and it was something that was done. And like I said right now, they would have the criminals, and they would ask the crowd, who would you want to be released? Mm-hmm. And here we also see that there's a man called Barabbas, and he had committed murder. He was actually a criminal compared to Jesus. Jesus was an innocent man, And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate, what they usually do. And he answered them, "Who do you want me to release for you? The King of Jews?" And here, the people, they were so demanding, and they were well, we want Jesus.
They were demanding the death of Jesus.
Yeah, they were. And they chose to have Jesus killed, because, and the craziest thing is that they chose to release the murderer instead. And that is reading that's you chose to kill a man that would literally perform miracles. Maybe here, he might have helped one of those people that are yelling, oh, crucify him, that's crazy. And Pilate, the crazy thing that's not really mentioned in the book of Mark is that Pilate knew Jesus was an innocent man, because the Romans and the Jews, they had this, in a way, this tension between them, and he could tell that
he was like, why are they so insistent?
Yeah.
It's like when you have that gut feeling, you know, that's how Pilate was. He was like, why are they so insistent in bringing Jesus to me? And here he knew that Jesus was an innocent man, and Pilate had two choices, you know, doing what was right, freeing an innocent man, Jesus, or what was politically expected of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a way, I feel like Pilate, time after time, he was trying to find opportunities to kind of like not kill Jesus, or maybe he was trying to go like with the crowd, but like maybe not kill Jesus, like maybe like torture him for a little bit and not kill him.
Yeah, and actually I read a commentary that that's what he thought they would do, because here, continuing on with the story, Pilate asked the crowd, what should I do with the man you call the King of Jews?
Yeah.
And I had mentioned to Melanie that when I would read this in a tone of like mocking.
Mm-hmm.
If you could say that it was towards Pilate, I would read it like, oh, then what should I do? You know, like him like being like, oh, well, I should, the obvious answer is to kill him, you know? But now that I'm aware that, you know, Pilate knew he was like an innocent man, he knew that in a way that they were trying to send him into a trap, because he wasn't gonna have any other choice than to like release him and have him killed. So now I read it with a tone of like, he's like do you guys really want me to kill him? Like, are you sure? You like
in a way he was trying to like convince them to like, well, maybe what if we just torture him a little bit and that's it, you know?
Yeah, and they're like, please, like, I read it with that tone now. You get me?
Yeah, because when we were reading it in Bible study, I was like, this is crazy, because I had never seen it like from that point of view, from Pilate's point of view, you know?
Yeah, but the crowd, they were like, crucify him. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and they had Jesus, you know, crucified.
Yeah.
And he delivered him to be, like I said, crucified. So that's like, I was telling Melanie, like, that's, in a way, Pilate was like in a really hard position, you know, and that's why the Jews sent Jesus to him too, because they knew that like he was going to have to do what the crowd would tell him to do, because that was like custom, you know, that was like what would have to happen, and it was like in a way tradition. And I also, in a commentary, it said a public crucifixion was good advertisement for Rome. And recently we visited Rome, and we would see, you know, we went into the Colosseum and we went to many other places, and we would see like the places, like what they would do for crucifixions and all of that, and it kind of all makes sense.
Yeah, we were reading it and I was like, oh, like the dots are connected.
Yeah, and like that Rome is really like, their history wise, it's really known for all of that, and they would just like really do torturous things to people, and now it just makes sense like why they would send him over there.
And I was remembering how they would tell us like, oh yeah, like a lot of Christians, there's a saying, they were like, a lot of people lie and say that Roman is known for the killing of Christians. And I was like, and they kept saying like, but it's a lie, like it's not true. But now like I'm reading it and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, so it's just like crazy, because like now I feel like I have a better understanding just towards like Pilate, and just like why they would send Jesus over there with him, because I mean they were known for that, and they were known for killing people.
Yeah, and actually, fun fact, the crucifixion was so bad that the Romans themselves wouldn't crucify Roman citizens. Did you know that? I read it right now.
I did not.
It was so bad that they wouldn't crucify like their own Romans. They would only crucify other people.
Yeah, and also this is like parentheses, like when we were in the Colosseum, because we went to the Colosseum inside, and like when they would say, oh yeah, people would sit up here for entertainment and they would watch them get killed. I was like, when they would say that, I was like, why would anyone want to watch that? But then like reading this, I'm like, people were literally like, they were like contributing and helping like make the crucifixion of Jesus possible. You know, so
they were demanding the crucifixion of Jesus.
They were insistent, they were demanding, and they were like, no,
like we want it.
So that's just all crazy.
Yeah. And so the next part is when Jesus is getting mocked. So I was telling Ashley how the people who were mocking Jesus were the same people who were praising and yelling Jesus when he was walking, that they were like, Hosanna. And now they're like, they were making fun of him, and they were saying, Hail
King of Jews, which is how they would call the kings, like Hail King or whatever king. So they were kind of making fun of him, and they were striking him in the head, and they were spitting at Jesus, and they were kneeling to him in a mockery way. They were like, oh, like,
and they also put a crown of thorns on him because they're like, oh, well, you want to be a king, you want to like have a crown, well, here you have this crown of thorns.
And they clothed him in purple cloaks. So purple clothes meant like they were meant for kings, like the kings would wear them. And so they clothed him in that, and they put him a crown of thorns. And then later on, they stripped the purple cloak off of him, and they put his own clothes. And they were leading him out to be crucified. So they were constantly making fun of him, and they were not just like only mocking him. They were like spitting at him. They were striking him. They were like,
they're doing like the worst possible things they could think of, like the most inhumane thing you can think of. Like obviously, like if a person spits at you, you're like what the, like you don't do that.
Like that's bad.
But they were here like doing it to Jesus, and like, which I'm like, oh my goodness, like they don't know what they were doing. It's crazy, dude. Like really, like once you like read everything, and once you kind of like get help from commentaries, and like, because you have to reread, because obviously we've read this story before, but now it's just like all clicks.
Yeah,
and that's just amazing, because every time you read again and again, like usually you get something different. Yeah. So this is like, it's just really amazing. Like, yeah. So now we move on to the crucifixion. And here, this is interesting because, like I said right now, like you always learn something different. I did not know that Simon had to help Jesus carry the cross, because he was in, and I read this in a commentary too, Jesus was in so bad shape after getting beaten up. He had to carry the cross that's 300 pounds. And like imagine like even like me when I hit myself, like I don't know, at the corner of the bed, I'm like, oh my gosh. And like imagine like getting beat up, getting spit on, like everything Jesus went through, and then still having to carry a 300-pound cross.
That's crazy.
So he was like, like once again, Jesus was in human form. We don't have that superhuman strength. We don't, so he was struggling.
Yeah, and so he couldn't even walk. Imagine having to carry the cross.
He couldn't walk. And I read in a commentary, they wanted Jesus alive for the crucifixion. So they were like, okay, we have to get someone else to carry. And it was like, was it like, I guess like a normal thing? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was like like a custom.
Yeah, like if they couldn't do it, then they would
find someone else to.
Yeah, and it was usually someone else that was from within.
Yeah, like for instance, if it was Jesus, it would have been like a local Jew.
Yeah,
would help Jesus.
But it wasn't, because they didn't want help.
They weren't willing to help.
And then the Romans couldn't, because that would just create so much controversy and everything. So they got a foreigner. So Simon was like not even.
He didn't even know.
He didn't even know. Yeah.
He didn't wake up thinking, I'm gonna carry the cross for Jesus today. No,
they got him, and since the Romans are the is like the authority, it's like. Yeah, like if it's
only like you do it or you get killed.
A lot, yeah. Basically, so here Simon was coming in from the country to carry his cross. I did not know that at all. And they brought him to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of skull, which is basically where Jesus got crucified. Mm-hmm. But here, an interesting connection that I read in the commentary that I would have never crossed my mind was they asked where was Simon Peter. And if you remember, Simon Peter is a disciple of Jesus, and we read in the last chapter that Peter denied Jesus, and his previous name before was Simon, and in this case another Simon took his place, because Simon Peter was nowhere to be found, because he denied Jesus and he had left his place.
That's crazy.
And I made the connection. This I added on. You have to keep your place and not let another Simon take the place that Jesus intended for you.
That's so true.
Because Peter denied Jesus. He left. He was ashamed of himself. And when reality, like, Jesus had a place for him all the time, and like someone else took his place. And it's very true, I feel like anything in life, like someone else can potentially like take your place. So you never want to miss the blessings that God has for us, ever. And that was just like an interesting connection that I was like, what the, like, I would have,
Ashley was there, and I was like, I would have never
even.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so now Simon is helping Jesus carry the cross. And the interesting thing here is that they offered Jesus like this wine that was like a medicine to help him like ease the pain, because that's what they would usually do. They were like, oh, well, here, take some of like this medication so you won't feel the pain as much. But Jesus denied it. And I remember reading this in Bible study. They were all like, well, why would he do that? But it was just because that's how it needed to be. And sin was so like painful, but he needed to experience that in order to take our place.
Yeah, I wrote here how Jesus refused any drug to numb his pain, and he chose to face the agony of the cross with a clear mind. Like he was feeling it. I can't even imagine. Like, that's crazy.
So then they crucified him and divided his garments among them. And with him, they crucified 2 robbers, one on his right and one on his left. And the people would keep yelling, "Save yourself, come down from the cross." But like, that was not the purpose that Jesus, like that wasn't. And they would also say, he saved others, he cannot save himself. I can't imagine how Jesus must have felt in that instance. Like, he's like, I feel like my thought process would be like, I know I can do it, but like,
it's not part of the plan.
Yeah. It's like when you can do something, but you can't.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't.
And then we move on to the next part, which is the death of Jesus. And here it says that there was a darkness over the whole land at the 9th hour. And here the darkness shows the agony of the creation, at the fact that Jesus was suffering, how the creation was, it was in so much agony that the creator was dying, like he was suffering. And here it says that Jesus was saying, my God, have you forsaken me? And he said it in another language. And the ones who were like being crucified next to him thought that he was calling Elijah, because he said Eloi, Eloi, right? So they were like, oh, he's trying to call Elijah, like, let's see if Elijah can come and save you. And like,
the mocking.
Yeah, they were mocking him. They were like, well, let's wait and see if Elijah can come and save you, And Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last. And when I was it in Bible study when we were reading it, and then we were like all reading it aloud, and it was so quiet. Everyone was like, and then it was like such a surreal moment where I got to like really like reflect on how like it all happened, how it, because I had read the story of the crucifixion of Jesus, like I knew it was taught to us since we were little, and I was like, oh yeah, he was crucified, he died. But now that I know like every detail that happened, it makes it more significant, it makes it more important.
More personal too, because when you have that personal relationship with Jesus, like you're able, like, my goodness, like you just see like the immense love that he had for us to go through that, because by Jesus saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was feeling the pain of sin.
Yeah, look, I wrote how the physical pain was horrible, but something I hadn't thought about, like I had thought about it, but I hadn't really deeply, truly thought about, was how he was suffering our spiritual fights. He was fighting all the spiritual fights of, sometimes you have like spiritual fights and you're like, oh, I can't do it. He was fighting everyone's spiritual fights.
Yeah, all the sin of the world fell on his shoulders. It was on his shoulders. That's why he experienced. I read in a commentary too that Jesus had never experienced that forsaken feeling. He deeply connected with God and everything, but by like him having to experience sin, that's when we sometimes fall into temptations, and when we sometimes forget about, we're like, oh well, let me let me go away a little bit. Like, let me move a little bit to the back. Let me step a little bit back. And that's why he mentioned, why have you forsaken me? Because he's just feeling a whole amount pain of sin that came from us.
Yeah, he was being judged by our sin. I feel like that's what he was really, like, yeah, the physical pain was horrible, but I feel like that's what really, like, what he was really dreading. You know?
Yeah.
And I think about it, and I'll be like, I don't, not necessarily sad, but I get, like, emotional, you know, and I'm like, he really did that for us, you know, like, I get, like, I think we said it last episode how during Easter, I was like, I was like, that's crazy. I had never cried during Easter, like truly cried, you know, like, knowing what happened, like, knowing how it all went down, I was like,
yeah, because you just truly understand, and you just gain a, like, better understanding of, like, everything.
It's crazy. And so after he breathed his last, the men who were beside him said, surely this man was the Son of God. So after he died, they're like, oh.
But, like, prior to that, an important event that made him, like, say that was that the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. You know, and the curtain, the veil, signified that we now have the free access to the throne of grace by the cross. We are now able to have that connection and that personal relationship with God because of what Jesus did and because of the blood of Jesus. Not only that, but we're also saved, you know, like, we deserve death because of our sins, but we live in grace because of Jesus. You know,
he died first.
Yes, and that's the best, like, you know, that's the ultimate power of demonstration, like, of love. That's it. Like, literally, like, love is Jesus. You know, love is what Jesus did on the cross for us. Like, that's just,
it's mind-blowing.
It is. It really is. Sometimes it's, like, speechless. Like, you just gotta, like, when I was reading this, you gotta sit in silence, and you, like,
yeah, like, we were going over it right now, and then we were just, like, laying down. We were just like what?
Yeah, like, it's just, like, everything, like, it's just incredible. And also, I mentioned, I wrote here, Jesus was misunderstood until the very end, because until he breathed his last breath, until the veil was torn into two, it's when it finally said, truly this was the Son of God. Like, imagine, like, it's, like, crazy, like, they did not realize who they had right in front of them the whole time until the end.
He was mocked until his last breath. That's crazy.
And Jesus did something greater than coming down from the cross, you know, because they constantly like, oh, well, come down. If you say you're the Messiah, come down. But Jesus rose from the dead. That is something greater than getting down from the cross, is raising from the dead. Jesus defeated death, you know, like, there's nothing like that the power of Jesus cannot do.
That's so crazy. And so from a distance, there was some women looking, and it was Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James. And these women have proved to be the most devoted disciples.
They really have, because, like, later, no spoilers, we see, like, these women are mentioned again because of, like, just their immense amount of faith that they have.
Yeah. And so the next part is when Jesus is buried. And so it was a day of preparation, and so Joseph went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And so Pilate was surprised to hear that he had already died. You know, he was probably like, oh, he died already? Like,
because it was like, I read that usually they lasted a really long time, but in this instance, Jesus died earlier than others.
And Joseph brought a linen clothing, and he wrapped Jesus in the linen clothing, and he brought him to the tomb, and he laid him in the tomb that had been cut out of rock. And he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb, where Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, saw where he was slain.
Yeah, and all of this is very important because, like, just everything, like, from rolling the stone against, like, the entrance, that's, like, very significant, because later we see what happens there. And Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, like we just constantly like hear their names, you know, like, and that's just also very important. But now I hadn't thought about this before, but like what Joseph did was also, because it's here on the side that someone wrote, what Joseph did is kind of comparing to how Mary of Bethany anointed Jesus, you know, and now he is like wrapping him in linen clothing, and he is like, you know, like setting him down in his tomb. And that's
crazy. Sometimes I don't connect the dots, and then I don't know where, but like, oh, it all makes sense now.
Yeah. So this is just,
It was a crazy chapter.
yeah, it was very crazy. Like if you just like read through it, you can miss so many details and so many things. But like when you take everything into consideration, you know, you read and you truly like submerge yourself in the word, and then like always like we've been mentioning a lot about like commentary, like, you know, we got this from that, like when you also like get something like that, like it just all makes sense, and then like it's just like incredible, like everything, you know. And
yeah, you truly admire everything more, you know.
It does.
It makes you realize how important every detail actually is, you know.
It is. Everything is important, you know. Everything in the Bible, like everything has such a significance. So that was the end of this episode. It was just, you know, we took it kind of slow because it's just something that you really have to like go in, and you really have to like let that sink in, you know, like you have to let that sink in that, you know, Jesus died on the cross for us, and because of him we have that personal connection, and we can have that personal intimacy with God, you know. Like it is just so significant and so powerful, you know. So this was a good chapter, you know, like every other chapter, but this one was the one that like stood the most, you know. This was basically like what we were waiting for since the beginning of like starting, you know. But we are so glad that you guys are listening or watching, you know. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. And also if you guys, you know, like have any questions, like I don't know, like where can I start reading the Bible, like let us know, because I know that, you know, my friends have asked me, some people have asked you, so if you guys wouldn't mind, you know, like we do not mind at all, like just answering questions, anything if you have any regards of like where to start or how can I read, you know.
It can be hard at first.
It really can, but let us know, and thank you. God bless you.